You know that amazing feeling when a student finally gets how a bath bomb works? It's a huge win. But here's the thing. Our goal isn't just for students to explain one phenomenon. It's for them to use that knowledge anywhere they encounter chemical reactions, like in the kitchen or at the beach, and even in the lab later in life. That's what's so powerful about transfer. Transfer is what happens when students apply what they've figured out in class to make sense of new situations in the world. With three-dimensional science learning, we aren't teaching students to memorize facts. We are asking them to use ideas, practices, and cross-cutting concepts flexibly. Here's a quick contrast. If we give students a quiz that asks them to define a chemical reaction, they might ace it, but that doesn't mean they can actually use that knowledge. If we ask them instead, why did this cake rise so much? Or why is this metal object getting flaky and crumbly? Now we're starting to see if they can apply what they know. That's why when we designed the transfer task in OpenSciEd, we created context that cues students to use their ideas and practices to make sense of something new. We made sure that we ask questions that feel authentic and are connected to real phenomena, and that ask students to use what they've already figured out. For example, in the 8th grade contact forces unit, instead of asking students to memorize Newton's laws, we asked them to bring their ideas to explain how a collision in soccer could cause a concussion. And then they have to come up with an evidence-based recommendation for the best way to prevent concussions in youth soccer. That way they're practicing applying ideas about forces, not just listing facts. Well-designed transfer tasks do more than assess content understanding. They elicit students' sense-making. They can actually be super motivating because they highlight an uncertainty, and students have the tools to figure that out. When we make it explicit to students that transferring their knowledge and practices is a goal of science class, it shifts how they see their work. Instead of thinking science is about getting the right answer, they start to see it as building a toolkit that they can use to figure things out long after the unit ends. So here are a couple of tips to support students as you start incorporating transfer into science learning. First, be explicit with your students that transfer is a goal. Let students know that transfer is something you're aiming for. You can do this in simple, everyday ways, like celebrating connections when you notice them and giving students chances to make connections themselves. When you see a link to a unit or a related idea, call it out. Share your excitement. And when students bring you something they think is connected, show genuine enthusiasm. And if possible, weave it into the learning right away. In one classroom, a student emailed his teacher during the thermal energy unit to tell her how he was thinking differently about his blankets at home. The teacher responded by incorporating blankets as an option in later investigations. You can also encourage transfer routinely by asking students to explain something from the related phenomena chart, either as a quick do now at the start of class or as a longer discussion when they pause, explain, and connect. Another tip for supporting transfer is to use the transfer tasks and start to build a routine that helps students engage with them. Transfer tasks are complex and often new for students. A routine can help support their entry into the task. In our other videos on transfer, we'll share ideas for specific elements of this type of routine. Sense-making is at the heart of our instruction, and it should be at the heart of our assessment too. When we prioritize transfer, we're not just checking on what students remember, we're building their confidence that science is something they can do anywhere, anytime.